Off the leash, off and running Black Monday edition of the program. We did a show last night after the Browns beat the Bengals for their 5th win of the year, and that show has quickly been thrown out the window because things happen that way in the NFL. The news today, of course, as you probably heard by now, the Browns have fired Kevin Stefanski. The Browns are retaining Andrew Berry as the general manager, but the head coach is out after a 5-win season that followed up a 3-win season. Ashley Holder, Leah Doherty, they are in Berea. We'll bring them in a moment. They spent some time in the locker room talking with players today. But we're going to start with the top dog, the toppest of top dogs in the organization. That is ownership. Jimmy Haslam was the first guy at the microphone today. Here's what he had to say.
First of all, ownership takes full responsibility for where we are. To win 8 games in 2 years is horrible. It's totally unacceptable, okay? And it's not going to continue. Our sole goal here is to be a consistent winner, not make the playoffs in 20 and then make it again in 23, not win 8 games in 2 years. That's not what we're trying to do. That's not acceptable. Our fans deserve better. I don't think there was one breaking point. I think you got to look at the body of work, and sometimes it's just time for a change, so we felt like it was time for a change.
Did you think the roster was good enough to win more games this year?
You know, it's easy for me to say yes. So, yeah, I think it was good enough to win more games.
I actually agree with him. I think the roster was better than a 5-win team. I don't think they should have made the playoffs. I don't think Kevin Stefanski needed to make the playoffs to save his job. And I'll get into a little bit more of that as the show unfolds. But, I mean, I loved the thing from Haslam right out of the gate, and let's bring in Ashley and Leah out there in Berea. When he's talking about, he said, that's horrible. That's totally unacceptable. It wasn't corporate speak that so many times you get from these guys. He actually showed emotion. Nobody uses the word horrible in a press release, and I didn't want Jimmy Haslam reading a press release. I wanted a guy that sounded aggravated like we're all aggravated. That's been terrible, and they fired the coach. How did you guys take his message today?
Well, when we got out there earlier today, first of all, you could already tell that they moved Haslam into the middle of the hallway, which they normally do not do. That is not where they have press conferences. So you could tell, listen, he wanted to get to the point. He wanted to say what he needed to say, and he wanted to get the heck out of there. And that's exactly what he did. But remember, Haslam said last year that 3 wins was not going to cut it. And I don't think he meant 2 more than the 3 was going to be good enough. And you could tell that a lot of people thought very highly of who Kevin Stefanski is as a person, but they just felt no longer that this was not the person to lead this organization. They did not want to go further. And I also think there's a lot more within this organization that we don't know about. We really don't know what those relationships like are with the players. Do they believe in this guy? Do they believe they can take him to the next step? And we'll talk a little bit more about what the players said. And that also raised a little bit more questions, Leah.
Yeah, I think it's telling when you have Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry both talking, like you mentioned, about how good Kevin Stefanski is as a person, but both admitting we should have won more games. I think even yesterday when I talked about Kevin Stefanski, I said, God, it's so hard because he was put in such a tough situation here with the quarterback situation, Deshaun Watson. It just felt like it was going to be hard for anyone to win, no matter who it was. But when you look back, they had the talent to win more games than they did. We look at that week 1 game against Cincinnati. You look at the Titans game. There were so many games that it was like they should have won this game. And it doesn't matter if you don't have the right quarterback in place or XYZ, toss in whatever excuse that you want. Something had to change because they are not winning winnable games. And it could be talent, it could be XYZ, whatever you want to point to. But there needed to be a shakeup here.
Felt overdue for sure. You guys were also in the locker room. It was locker cleanout day, and you heard from quite a few guys. Sometimes locker cleanout day, you don't know what you're going to get. You're going to get the bottom barrel of the roster at times. That was not the case today. There were frontline players there. Walk us through some of the guys you spoke to and the type of things you heard.
Yeah, well, we'll leave Shedeur for the last one just because Shedeur really didn't want to comment too much on, what the next coach needed to have to help this team out. But we heard from some of those veterans like Denzel Ward and Grant Delpit. And the big thing that Denzel Ward said is, look, they are looking for someone to have accountability and be assertive. And when he said that, I was thinking, that must mean that that's not what they were getting from Kevin Stefanski, that he wasn't holding players or maybe coaches and certain people accountable for the position that they're in, or maybe even himself accountable for the position that they're in. And Grant Delpit also added to that, saying, look, they needed a leader. They needed someone that was going to push them and want them to play football. He said it was way past the X's and O's. You really got to get back to that football mentality. So it seems like even those veteran guys, someone like Denzel Ward that's been with Stefanski for those 6 seasons, was like, look, we do need someone else. You can kind of tell he caught himself a little bit. He didn't want to, get down on Kevin, speaking about him. But at the same time, he's asked a question. He answers the question. And, I don't think Denzel wants to lose, just like, Myles Garrett's very clear that he doesn't want to. We didn't see him much in the locker room. We did not hear from him. He did step in for a little bit, but, Myles got gone real quick, and Jerry Jeudy, he wasn't trying to talk. So a lot of guys were avoiding the camera, I would say, outside of, Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, and Joe Bitonio.
Yeah, speaking of Joe Bitonio, there was a lot of interesting reaction when going back and listening to all the locker room interviews, because you talk about some of those guys saying they want a coach that's going to hold people more accountable, and then you have sound from Joel Bitonio saying, doesn't matter if it's a coach that's going to yell at you or a coach that's more soft-spoken. He said that, to me, is not the most important thing. It's schematically what they're bringing to the field and what the product on the field is going to look like. And Joel Bitonio, I mean, this is a side note. It's not about Kevin Stefanski or Andrew Berry, but we don't know what his future is going to hold. And he was emotional. He said, I'm a loyal guy, talking about his relationship with Kevin Stefanski, the time they spent together. And he was asked, look, if this was your last season, how do you reflect back on it? And he got emotional and got choked up. And so that's a guy that has been a huge supporter of Kevin Stefanski. And then you talk to Shedeur Sanders, and he said Kevin Stefanski was a guy that was hard on me. He said that last week, and he talked about how their relationship evolved. And so it's like, sometimes people are saying maybe he wasn't holding him accountable enough, but then you have Shedeur saying he was a hard coach. So we're never going to know exactly what goes on, in that locker room. But it was also interesting that Shedeur Sanders said, we just found out a couple moments ago when everyone else found out. And then he was asked, did Jimmy Haslam address the team? And he was like, yeah.
Well, let's get a little sticky. Getting in. I don't believe that they found out on social media. I don't believe that, but I also believe that he's not going to tell us the truth. And neither of those guys on that team is going to tell us exactly how they found out, when they found out. And we get it. But going back to, owner Jimmy Haslam, he said that he's listening to the fans. And I believe, his grandsons and all those people, they keep them up to date on what the fans are saying online, on TV, whatever it might be. I think they watch a lot of stuff, because he even said something in the press conference like, I know you guys have said this, but this isn't true, XYZ. And they are listening. The guy just driving by is yelling something. I mean, all the... Yeah, he put some type of sign back here about Andrew Berry. I don't know. I don't even know what it says. We probably can't even show it. But it's the point of this is a passionate fan base. And again, me and Leah weren't here for those 0-16 and 1 and all that stuff, those 1-win seasons. This is where they're like, we draw the line. We can't go past it. Even though he was a 2-time coach of the year, it's like, look, you've had a lot of losing, seasons. We've got to stop it here, because what is that? What is that next step? And also, we don't know what they're going to do with Shedeur. We don't have an answer if this is the guy that they're going with, right? Barry already said they're looking internally. They're looking at external veteran options, and they're also looking at the draft. He said it remains to be seen. So again, another situation of that. And we don't even forget Deshaun Watson's on the team. We forgot about that too.
Oh, no, there's so much to unpack here.
Big off season.
It never ends. All right, I'm not going to get you off the hook without a true-false question, because it's a staple of every show, but I got to get you out of here after one segment, ladies. So we're going to close the first segment with it instead of open the second. True-false question of the week. You know the rules. No maybes, no probablys, no living in the gray area. Thumbs up, thumbs down proposition. Browns made 2 moves today, 2 decisions. They fired Kevin Stefanski. They retained Andrew Berry. True-false, the Browns made the right decisions today.
I said true. That's what I said a couple weeks ago I thought was going to happen. I thought they were going to fire Kevin Stefanski and keep Andrew Berry. Just the sheer fact, and Jimmy Haslam talked about it today. When you talk about the moves they made in free agency, Malik Collins, you talk about the trade that they had bringing in Tyson Campbell, right? Bringing him in. And then you look at...
He was playing hurt.
Yeah, we learned that too. I mean, we knew he was a little injured, but yeah, he said the sheer fact that you have a guy coming in with a shoulder that was that messed up, left the game, still fought to come back in. you look at their first round picks they're going to have upcoming, and then you look at this rookie draft class. That's what I had really said. I think the reason they're going to keep him. And so I think Andrew Berry made a lot of really good moves this season, made good moves in the offseason, and I think they still trust him and what he can bring to the table. But yeah, when it comes to the product on the field, like something has to change and someone's going to fall on the sword for it, and that's Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, I mean, I double down on everything you just said. I think that Barry was saved because of that draft class, because it is such a good draft class. It's so exciting to know what these guys are going to be able to do next season. And you know what? It is what it is, right? I think Stefanski knew that his time was coming down. And again, we don't know all those internal conversations and how those relationships were, even though they say everything was peaches and roses and everything was good. It may not have been that way. And I think Stefanski looked like, Mark, when you brought up this topic that you guys said yesterday that you were talking about on Tailgate, of just that he kind of gave up on his team when he gave up the play calling 2 years in a row. I mean, I started really thinking about that, and I said, yeah, it kind of does seem like he gave up. So you look at it and you say, did he even want to be here at this point? Maybe he wanted to go somewhere, have a fresh start and whatnot, and maybe it just worked out for the both of them, because towards the end it just really didn't seem like Stefanski wanted to answer anything, talk about anything. And it is what it is. Good riddance at this point. Happy birthday to me, because that's what I wanted. I said, if I'm going to work on my birthday, he needs to go.
Well, and look, he's going to be a top coaching candidate somewhere, right? So he's going to go off and he's going to have success.
But you know what the thing is, someone's going to say, oh, he's doing so much better here. Well, listen, if you don't land with the Titans, the Raiders, the Jets, or the Browns, well, you already went to a winning team. You're already good. So
I mean, he could also
to a great start if he doesn't go to any of those teams.
He could also just take a year off. The Browns are going to pay him, right? There's nothing wrong with going to the beach for 365 days or something like that, right? So that's the thing. That's what you get when you're a fired NFL coach.
Yeah, well, Mark, I think our boss Brian's in the building. Maybe he'll give us a pay.
I think
There you go.
need that.
Go to the beach.
Brian said we
We
should
should
like
the podcast on the road and the beach.
Brian says not
Like,
lightly.
shout out to our boss Brian.
All right, ladies. Ashley, happy birthday. Thank you for putting in the legwork on your big day. Ladies, we will, it's been a great, fun show doing this all year with you. This is how we're wrapping up the regular season version of Off the Leash. Take care, ladies. All right, that's Ashley Holder, Leah Doherty, and Berea. They talked with the players this afternoon. When we come back, we're going to hear from Andrew Berry. I have some thoughts on this thing. The big thing for me, and I'll expand on this on the other side of the break. Finally, somebody was held accountable for the jalopy we saw every Sunday here with the Cleveland Browns in the 2025 season. Off the Leash continues after this. Off the Leash continues. Browns fire Kevin Stefanski. Andrew Berry remains as the team's general manager. He was a guy that a lot of people wondered if he would be fired. We talked about it at the end of the first segment with the gals, that it was really, Jimmy Haslam said, the strength of the last year. And he didn't want to just say the draft, but obviously the draft was a big part of that. Free agency with Malik Collins, the Campbell trade has been a good one for them so far. But what he also is saying there, until that last year of work, Berry really hadn't done a whole lot, right? If you're only citing the last year of good work out of Andrew Berry, then that tells you the previous few years weren't very good. If you got to point to that last year as the reason you're not firing him, I would agree with that. I understand they didn't have a lot of firsts to deal with because of the Watson trade. I don't ultimately believe he was the guy that spearheaded the Watson trade. They'll say it was a collective decision. Somebody's always driving that train. When they say it's a collective decision, it means somebody made the decision for everyone else. You think Kevin Stefanski was driving that train? I don't think so. Here's Andrew Berry today reacting to them firing Kevin Stefanski.
We've ultimately felt like we did not see enough progress in areas that were controllable, independent of certain game outcomes. I know how hard it's been for our fans this year. We have a great appreciation for their loyalty, their dedication to the team. I think all head coaches get evaluated on, whether it's game strategy going into the game, in-game decision making, certainly player development if you're a young team. The QB's obviously a big part of it, but there are multiple areas, and some, quite frankly, I thought we did very well. Others we didn't see enough progress in. The offensive line, that's a position group that I do imagine will have a fair amount of turnover as we go into 2026. There's a lot of work that we still need to do on the offense from a personnel standpoint. I think that we have a number of players that will continue to be pillars and are players that will continue to develop and invest in. But the offense is going to have significant investment this offseason, Jeff. I own the results the past 2 years, Nate. I own it entirely. And ownership evaluates every one of us in the operation on an annual basis. I'm no different.
All right, you can't own it entirely. If you owned it entirely, you would have been fired today, not just the head coach. So let's just get through that, because ownership will say they own it, and then the GM says, no, it's on me, and then the coach says it's on me. They all have to say the things they're supposed to say. Somebody has to get canned. Today it was Stefanski. I'm glad. I think this was the right move. All right? Somebody needed to be held accountable for this. Denzel Ward said something that I think a lot of us felt when he said today, the next guy needs to hold players accountable. He said the quiet part out loud, because then when pressed on it, he kind of backtracked a little bit. I understand that, but by then, hey, the horse was out of the barn. No, Kevin Stefanski did not hold people accountable. You cannot tell me he held people accountable. Somebody has to explain to me how this special teams unit was allowed to continue to do what it did if he held people accountable. That's just one aspect of this team. But that was the most ridiculous outfit I think I've ever seen in an NFL team. They were hemorrhaging yards, and not just every once in a while, on a weekly basis. They were making screw-up after screw-up. Large returns, fumble the ball, somebody miss a kick against Cincinnati. And I know Schmidt was really good, but it goes into it. It was ridiculous. Why is Gage Larvidan still on the team? Why do they keep running him out here to be the guy to return punts when all he does is fumble the football, make mistakes, screw things up? No, he doesn't hold people accountable. Bubba Ventrone, I don't care how good of a player he was. I don't care how good of a coach he is supposed to be. That unit was absolutely ridiculous. Why is Gage Larvidan? I'm going to keep going back to this. You hold people accountable? No, you don't. Why is he even on the roster? Gage Larvidan is a wide receiver who plays kick returner. He's not good enough to be a receiver on this team, which says a lot, because it's the worst receiving room in the NFL, and he can't crack that unit. But they keep running him out there to fumble the punts? No accountability is where I'm going with this. This isn't a blast Gage Larvidan moment. It's blasting the guy who kept running that dude out there. Zero accountability. Finally today, somebody was held accountable. And somebody's going to say, and I've already heard this on the Twitterverse, and to a degree, it is a fair counter, but only to a degree. It was a bad roster. What did you expect him to do? How about not win 5 games? I think if he wins 7, he's still the head coach of the team. Jimmy Haslam never said he had to make the playoffs. Jimmy Haslam never even said he had to have a winning record. They just said to have win more games. 3 last year, 5 this year. There's 2 games I cannot get over. I cannot get past the New York Jets game, and I cannot get past the Tennessee Titans games. Especially after the Titans game, that's when I was like, fire the coach, because that's embarrassing. They lost to the Jets, of course, because they gave up 2 returns for touchdowns because of special teams that we talked about. And of course, after that, there was no accountability. They just kept running the same people out there. And then there was the Titans game. That is the most embarrassing loss I have seen in a long time. We've seen this team get their doors blown off. They got beat by the Lions, 34-10. Beat by the Steelers, 23-9. Beat by the Patriots, 32-13. None of that was embarrassing as having the 1-win Tennessee Titans walk onto your building, walk onto your field, and dog walk you. Cam Ward was trash in that game. That's a team that could not run the football all year. And Tony Pollard goes for $160. They got that other kid that doesn't even have an ACL in his knee. The Tajay Spears, I think he is. That rushing attack just dump trucked the Browns. That was the game I said, something's got to change. And of course nothing changed, because nobody was ever held accountable. Somebody held accountable today. People keep saying that. Well, what did you want them to do? The quarterback was bad. The receivers were bad. Here's what I want them to do. I want to find a guy that doesn't have to have everything perfect for the team to not be terrible. Is that too much to ask? The defense is really good. The running game's pretty good. Judkins is good. The tight ends are good. Yeah, the quarterback has a situation, and the receiving room is a dumpster fire. Does everything have to be perfect for the team to not be terrible? No. At some point, it's an indictment on the head coach. And I'm not fire the coach guy. You never hear me come on and say fire the coach. Because I don't always believe it's on the coach. Because at the end of the day, it's players that play, and it's players that make mistakes. It's Gage Larvidan and those guys that fumble the ball. But when you keep running the same people out there over and over and over and over again, at some point, I'm going to look at the guy at the headset. And I'm going to credit Eric Metcalf, who said this a couple of weeks ago on Tailgate. It was a great point. Ashley referenced it. You give up play calling once, that's fine. You give it up twice, back-to-back years, what are we doing here? What is that? If you thought Reese was good enough to call plays, then why wasn't he calling plays from the beginning? You want to change things, right? You got to say things are got to be different. Let him do it. I mean, some of this stuff was absolutely ridiculous. And I'm supposed to get all excited that they won 2 games at the end of the year? Oh, whoop-de-doo, sports review. They won 2 games in a row at the end of the year. Woo-woo! I don't care. Fire him. Needed to go. Needed to go. 6 years he was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. He was a good hire. I said that yesterday on the show. I will stand by that. He was a good hire considering where they were coming from. Freddie Kitchens, Hugh Jackson, all that silliness. Kevin Stefanski brought stability and respectability to the outfit. 11 wins his first year. But then after that, he had an 8-9 season, then a 7-10 season. Then they went back to the playoffs with 11 wins and were blown out in the opening round. And then 3 wins last year, 5 wins last year. You have 4 losing seasons in 5 years. The 1 winning season, you got your doors blown off in a playoff game you probably were considered a favorite to win. Not good enough. No, you can't bring that guy back. For what, year 7? So next year we could do this all again when they still don't have a quarterback? Speaking of quarterbacks. All right, Deshaun Watson. I dropped my pen. I'm so out of my mind going right now. I'm dropping things. It's a crazy time. All right, Andrew Berry talked about Deshaun Watson specifically today. Didn't get in a lot of specific players. Did talk about Watson. We'll cover that when we come back. Off the Leash continues here. Black Monday edition of the program. Deshaun Watson, yes, you can't have a Browns macro conversation, big picture, without talking about this guy. For obvious reasons, I'm going to turn it over to the GM first. Here he is.
First, I'll say we're very pleased with how Deshaun went through and attacked his rehab this past year, how he engaged with the team, what he did in the meeting rooms. Very pleased with the progress that he made in that regard. Look, I can never predict the future, but right now we do anticipate him being on the 2026 team.
Yeah, he kind of has to be because the cap hit is $80 million. I don't know what they do with quarterback, and normally that would be the thrust of the conversation at this point, right? But it can't be because of the whole situation with the coach. They got to hire a coach. Then we're going to talk about coordinators and that kind of stuff. And then we're going to eventually get into draft and quarterback and things like that. They don't have a choice, but they have to bring him back. And the Browns are picking 6th as of right now. And we're going to wrap the show here in a second. As of right now, it's basically considered a 2-quarterback draft. Mendoza 1, Dante Moore out of Oregon 2. They'll probably go 1 and 2, Raiders, Jets. And the Browns are on the outside looking in. That's as we sit here in January. A lot can change, but I don't know if it's going to change significantly enough for a quarterback to be there at 6. Do the Browns have the extra first? Could they move up? Yes, they could. I don't know why either of those 2 teams, though, Raiders, Jets, would trade out of the pick when they badly need quarterbacks. So the Browns could very well go into next year with a quarterback room of Sanders, Watson, and Dylan Gabriel. And that is a whole nother show. But Deshaun Watson not going anywhere. We are going somewhere for now. We got to put a wrap on this thing. Off the Leash in the books for the regular season here, 2025. Technically now 2026. We'll be back at some point because there is always something to talk about with the Cleveland Browns. For Leah Doherty and Ashley Holder, I'm Mark Schwab. Fire!